What if the wisest person who ever lived was someone who freely admitted they knew absolutely nothing? And what if that admission holds the key to quieting the restless mind that keeps you awake tonight, searching for answers in the gentle darkness of ancient Athens where our story begins? Meet Socrates, the peculiar philosopher who wandered dusty streets asking uncomfortable questions. His mother was a midwife helping others give birth to children, while he became a midwife of ideas, helping souls give birth to wisdom through the simple revolutionary act of admitting ignorance. In Act 1, witness young Socrates in his father's workshop, discovering that truth, like sculpture, emerges not by adding but by chipping away what doesn't belong, until the oracle's shocking pronouncement transforms a curious stonecutter into Athens' most dangerous questioner. Act 2 reveals how this ugly man with beautiful thoughts challenged every certainty Athens held dear, teaching that virtue is knowledge while living in deliberate poverty, developing a method of questioning that would outlive empires. Act 3 brings us to his prison cell, where friends gather to witness how a philosopher faces death, not with fear, but with the same gentle curiosity he brought to life, arguing for the soul's immortality, even as hemlock creeps through his veins. And in Act 4, watch how his execution, meant to silence dangerous questions, instead amplifies them across centuries, as Plato transforms grief into dialogues that make Socrates immortal, his ghost still haunting every university seminar and therapy session where someone dares to say, "I don't know." Tonight, let the story of this ancient gadfly remind you that wisdom begins where certainty ends, that the most profound sleep comes to those who've examined their waking life, and that sometimes the greatest teacher is the one who insists he has nothing to teach. Only questions that awaken the wisdom already sleeping in your soul. Young Socrates watches his father's weathered hands guide the chisel through marble. Each strike deliberate, each chip revealing something that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. The workshop smells of stone dust and olive oil, and through the window drifts the endless chatter of Athens awakening to another day in 460 BCE. The boy's fingers trace the emerging curves of a goddess's face, but his mind wanders to deeper mysteries. Not what shapes hide in stone, but what truths hide in the souls of those who pass by their shop each morning. So certain of everything, so quick with answers to questions they've never truly asked. The agora sprawls before him like a living tapestry when his father sends him on errands. This great marketplace where democracy breathes and argues and haggles over the price of wisdom itself. Merchants shout about the finest pottery from Corinth, the sweetest figs from the countryside. While in the next stall, sophists peddle knowledge like imported wine, expensive, intoxicating, leaving you dizzy but no wiser than before. Young Socrates weaves between the crowds, his peculiar face already drawing stares. That upturned nose, those protruding eyes that seem to see too much. He listens to a politician promise easy prosperity to a gathering crowd, watches how the words flow like honey but leave no substance behind, notices how quickly certainty crumbles when someone asks, "But what exactly do you mean by justice?" His father Sophroniscus pulls him aside one evening as they work late, the oil lamps casting dancing shadows on half-finished statues. "The secret of our craft," he says, running his palm along a smooth marble shoulder, "is that we create nothing. The form already exists within the stone. We merely remove what doesn't belong." The boy nods, filing this away in some deep place where it will germinate for years. This idea that truth might work the same way, not something we build or invent, but something we uncover by chipping away falsehood, assumption, comfortable lies. The call to military service arrives like all of life's interruptions, sudden and non-negotiable. At Potidaea, his fellow soldiers discover this strange young man who can stand motionless for hours, lost in thought while snow gathers on his shoulders, impervious to cold that sends others huddling around fires. They joke at first, then grow uneasy, then almost reverent as he maintains his vigil through an entire night, emerging at dawn with the same calm expression as if he'd been somewhere else entirely, exploring territories no map could ever chart. His courage in battle matches his endurance in contemplation. He saves Alcibiades' life, refuses the honors, returns to his meditation as if killing and thinking require the same disciplined detachment from the body's demands. The oracle's pronouncement arrives through his friend Chaerephon like lightning through a clear sky. No one is wiser than Socrates. The words torment him, this man who knows with bone-deep certainty that he knows nothing of importance. How can someone who questions everything be called wise by the god who speaks through sacred vapors at Delphi? The riddle burrows into his mind like a seed into soil, demanding investigation, requiring him to test this divine assertion against the confident knowledge claims of Athens' most celebrated citizens. He approaches the politicians first, these men who shape laws and guide the state, surely repositories of practical wisdom. In the assembly, he finds Anytus, respected and influential, more than willing to discourse on justice and governance. But as Socrates asks his gentle questions, what is justice itself, not merely examples of just acts? The politician's confidence wavers. Definitions circle back on themselves, contradictions emerge like cracks in a foundation, until Anytus retreats into angry silence, his certainty revealed as hollow as a painted mask. One by one, Socrates visits them all, these leaders of men, finding the same pattern, absolute confidence masking absolute ignorance, and worse, an unwillingness to admit they might not know what they claim to know. The poets offer different mysteries. Ion the rhapsode can recite Homer so beautifully that listeners weep. Yet when Socrates asks him to explain the wisdom in the verses he performs, the man stammers like a child caught in a lie. The god speaks through me, Ion insists. I am merely the instrument. But if you don't understand what flows through you, Socrates wonders aloud, how can you claim to possess wisdom? The poets create beauty that moves the soul, but beauty without understanding, inspiration without comprehension, is this wisdom or its shadow? Hope flickers when he turns to the craftsmen, these masters of tangible skills. The potter knows clay, understands fire and glaze, can explain each step of transformation from earth to vessel. The bronze worker demonstrates the precise temperatures for different alloys, the techniques passed down through generations. Here, finally, is genuine knowledge. But then the potter begins expounding on the nature of the soul. The bronze worker lectures on political theory, their expertise in one domain inflating into claimed mastery of all domains. They know something, unlike the politicians and poets, but this partial knowledge blinds them to the vastness of what they don't know. The oracle's meaning crystallizes like morning frost. He is wisest because he alone recognizes the poverty of human knowledge, while others mistake their fragments for the whole. This recognition transforms him from curious questioner to man with a mission. If the god has marked him as wisest for knowing nothing, then perhaps his purpose is to share this saving ignorance with others, to serve as Athens' gadfly, stinging the great sluggish horse of the city into wakefulness. The unexamined life, he begins to say, is not worth living. An examination must begin with admitting what we don't know. Xanthippe enters his life like a thunderstorm, all passion and practicality, grounding his philosophical flights with the weight of domestic reality. Their marriage becomes Athens' favorite comedy. The philosopher who questions everything wed to a woman who questions why he can't earn a proper living, why their children must grow up in poverty while their father gives away wisdom for free. Yet perhaps he needs this earthly anchor, this daily reminder that even the most ethereal philosophy must coexist with dirty dishes and crying children, that wisdom includes learning how to live with those we love despite our differences. 3 sons arrive in succession: Lamprocles, Sophroniscus, named for his grandfather, little Menexenus, each another mouth to feed on a stonecutter's irregular income. Socrates loves them with the distracted affection of a man whose true children are ideas, whose legacy lies not in biological inheritance, but in the souls he helps give birth to wisdom. He tells himself his poverty is a gift to them, teaching by example that a man needs little to be happy, that wealth of spirit matters more than gold in the strongbox. Xanthippe's sharp tongue suggests she disagrees. The method that will bear his name emerges organically from these encounters, refined through thousands of conversations in the agora's dust and heat. Not teaching, but midwifery. Not filling empty vessels, but helping souls discover what they already contain. The questions come in gentle succession, each building on the last. exposing contradictions not to humiliate but to liberate. What is courage? Leads to, is courage always good? Leads to, can courage serve evil ends? Leads to, then what makes courage virtuous? Until the confident answerer realizes they've been using words they don't understand, living by concepts they've never examined. His appearance becomes part of his teaching. This man who looks like a satyr discussing beauty, whose bulging eyes and snub nose challenge every assumption about philosophy requiring physical refinement. The young aristocrats who begin following him through the streets learn their first lessons simply by observing him, that surfaces lie, that true beauty radiates from the soul's alignment with truth and virtue. They call him ugly, and he laughs, agreeing completely, wondering aloud whether a beautiful body housing an ugly soul is preferable to its opposite. These young followers multiply like birds gathering around scattered grain. They come for entertainment at first, to watch the great Socrates reduce pompous men to stammering confusion, but they stay for something deeper. Critias, Charmides, Xenophon, and especially young Plato with his wrestler's build and poet's soul, drawn to this strange man who offers no easy answers but teaches the harder art of asking better questions. They learn that wisdom begins with 3 simple words that most men would rather die than utter: I don't know. The irony delights him. This man who claims to teach nothing becomes the teacher everyone seeks. This possessor of no knowledge becomes the source of the deepest learning. They expect him to fill their minds with facts and formulas, but instead he empties them of false certainties, creating space for genuine understanding to grow. His poverty, which began as mere circumstance, becomes a deliberate choice, a visible sign that he wants nothing the world values, needs nothing power can provide, fears nothing authority can threaten. Yet this very independence plants the seeds of his destruction. A man who questions everything must eventually question the foundations of society itself. The gods the city worships, the democracy it celebrates, the values it kills to defend. His students include those who will become Athens' greatest enemies. Young men whose sharp minds, honed by Socratic questioning, will turn against the very democracy that nurtured them. The city begins to mutter about this corrupter of youth, this atheist who claims to hear divine voices, this gadfly whose sting has become less amusing and more threatening. The path stretches before him, leading inevitably toward a choice between philosophy and life itself, between the silence that would save him and the questions that define him. But that morning in the agora, surrounded by young faces eager to learn the art of knowing nothing, Socrates feels only the joy of the hunt, the thrill of pursuing truth wherever it might lead. The sun climbs higher, the shadows shorten, and still the questions flow. Each one a chisel stroke revealing the wisdom that was always there, waiting patiently beneath the surface of certainty. The golden age of Athens surrounds him. Pericles building the Parthenon, Sophocles writing tragedies, democracy flourishing, yet Socrates focuses not on external glory, but on the internal architecture of the soul, asking what makes a life truly worth living. While marble columns rise toward heaven and tragic heroes fall on stage, he wanders the agora with a different kind of construction in mind. The city celebrates its power, its wealth, its artistic achievements, but he asks whether any of this matters if the citizens themselves remain unexamined, their souls neglected like abandoned temples. The contrast becomes his teaching. Athens builds monuments to last forever, while ignoring the only structure that truly matters, the character of those who walk among these gleaming stones. His daily routine becomes a form of worship, rising early to walk the streets, engaging anyone willing to examine their beliefs, treating each conversation as a sacred opportunity to move closer to truth through the admission of ignorance. The fishmonger setting up his stall finds himself discussing the nature of justice. The young soldier polishing his armor explores what courage really means. The wealthy merchant counting his coins confronts questions about the true source of happiness. Each encounter follows the same pattern: confidence giving way to confusion, confusion opening space for genuine inquiry, inquiry leading not to answers but to better questions. This is his liturgy, performed not in temples but in the dusty corners where ordinary people live their unexamined lives. The famous encounter with Menno's slave boy demonstrates his revolutionary teaching method. Through careful questions, an uneducated child discovers geometric principles, proving that learning is really remembering, that wisdom lies dormant within every soul. "Look," he says to the gathered crowd, drawing figures in the sand. "This boy has never studied mathematics, yet watch what emerges." Square by square, question by question, the child reasons his way to the Pythagorean theorem. The implications stagger those watching. If an untutored slave contains such knowledge, what does this say about human nature itself? The soul must have existed before birth, must have gazed upon eternal truths before descending into flesh. Education becomes not filling empty vessels, but awakening sleeping memories. He challenges the concept of virtue itself. Can courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom be taught like pottery or mathematics? Or are they something deeper, connected to the very essence of what it means to be human? The question torments him because it strikes at the heart of everything Athens believes. The sophists claim they can teach virtue for a fee, like teaching rhetoric or wrestling. But why then are the sons of virtuous men so often corrupt? Why does Pericles, wisest of leaders, raise sons who shame his name? Perhaps virtue resembles not a skill to be mastered, but a harmony to be achieved, an alignment of the soul with truths it already knows but has forgotten in the noise of daily life. The paradox of weakness emerges from his questioning. If people truly know what is good, why do they choose evil? His answer revolutionizes moral philosophy. No one does wrong willingly. All vice stems from ignorance of what is truly good. The thief believes stolen gold will bring happiness. The tyrant thinks power will satisfy his soul. The adulterer imagines pleasure outweighs integrity, but they are all mistaken, confused about the nature of the good life. If they truly understood that virtue alone brings happiness, they would choose differently. This isn't naive optimism, but profound insight into human psychology. We always pursue what we believe will fulfill us. We simply misunderstand what fulfillment means. Alcibiades, the brilliant and beautiful young politician, becomes both devoted follower and living contradiction. Drawn to Socratic wisdom, yet unable to resist the temptations of power, wealth, and physical pleasure that Socrates transcends. Here walks Athens' golden boy, blessed with every advantage, yet tormented by the gap between what he knows and how he lives. In private, he weeps at Socrates' words, recognizing the poverty of his ambitious life. In public, he chases glory with desperate hunger. The philosopher watches with compassion as his most gifted student illustrates the very paradox they discuss, knowing the good yet choosing its opposite, proving that intellectual understanding alone cannot transform the soul without something deeper, some fundamental reorientation of desire itself. The philosopher's strange immunity to physical desires amazes his companions. He can drink without getting drunk, withstand cold without complaint, resist sexual temptation without effort, as if his focus on the soul has freed him from bodily tyranny. At symposiums, he matches the heaviest drinker's cup for cup, yet remains perfectly lucid, discussing philosophy while others slide under tables. In winter campaigns, he walks barefoot through snow while soldiers shiver in their cloaks. When Alcibiades himself, beautiful beyond description, attempts seduction, Socrates sleeps beside him untouched, as if beauty were merely another interesting phenomenon to observe without being enslaved. This isn't asceticism for its own sake, but the natural result of caring more for wisdom than pleasure. His concept of the soul's immortality emerges through dialogue and questioning. If learning is remembering, then the soul must have existed before birth, and if it existed before, why not after death as well? The logic unfolds like a flower in his conversations. We recognize truths we've never been taught. We grasp principles that transcend physical experience. The slave boy's geometry lesson suggests we carry knowledge from beyond this life. And if the soul predates the body, why should it perish with flesh and bone? Death becomes merely another transition, perhaps even a liberation, freeing the soul to contemplate truth without the body's distractions. The fear of death that paralyzes most humans dissolves in the light of this reasoning. The theory of forms begins to crystallize. Beyond the imperfect copies we see in the physical world lie perfect, eternal forms of justice, beauty, goodness. And the philosopher's task is to turn the soul's eye toward these higher realities. Every beautiful thing participates in beauty itself, yet falls short. Every just act reflects justice, yet incompletely. The physical world becomes a cave of shadows, while reality, true, unchanging reality, exists in a realm accessible only to the mind. This isn't mysticism, but rigorous logic. If we can recognize justice in different acts, there must be some standard of justice by which we judge. The philosopher trains the soul to look past shadows toward the light that casts them. He introduces the revolutionary idea that virtue is knowledge, that if we truly understood what justice, courage, and temperance were, we would naturally embody them, making moral education the highest calling of human life. This isn't merely intellectual knowledge, but a deep, transformative understanding that reshapes desire itself. The coward who truly grasps courage cannot remain cowardly. The unjust man who genuinely comprehends justice cannot continue in injustice. Knowledge and virtue become one, making philosophy not an abstract discipline, but the most practical of all pursuits, the art of living well. Every other study pales beside this supreme science of human flourishing. The cave allegory takes shape through his conversations. Most people live chained in darkness, mistaking shadows on the wall for reality, while the philosopher's role is to break free and help others turn toward the light of truth. Picture humanity imprisoned since childhood, necks fixed to watch only shadows cast by objects they cannot see. They name these shadows, debate their movements, become experts in predicting shadow behavior. Then, one prisoner breaks free, climbs toward daylight, sees the real objects, and ultimately the sun itself. When he returns to free others, they mock him, say his eyes are ruined, threaten violence rather than risk their comfortable darkness. The philosopher lives this allegory, seeing truths others cannot imagine, bearing their ridicule with patience. His relationship with the sophists deepens into philosophical warfare. They sell the appearance of wisdom for money, teaching rhetoric without regard for truth, while he offers genuine inquiry freely, caring only that souls grow closer to wisdom. Protagoras claims man is the measure of all things, that truth is relative to each perceiver. Gorgias teaches persuasion techniques that can make weak arguments defeat strong ones. They grow wealthy, teaching young aristocrats to win debates regardless of justice. Socrates opposes them not from envy but principle. Wisdom cannot be sold because it cannot be possessed. It can only be pursued. The sophists offer clever words. He offers transformation. They promise power. He promises only the difficult joy of self-knowledge. The question of piety becomes central as he prepares for his eventual trial. What does it mean to be religious? Is it performing rituals and sacrifices? Or is it the deeper worship of pursuing truth and virtue regardless of personal cost? He interrogates Euthyphro, a priest prosecuting his own father, about the nature of holiness. Do the gods love pious acts because they are pious, or are acts pious because the gods love them? The question unravels conventional religion, suggesting that goodness exists independently of divine whim. True piety might be not mindless ritual, but the courage to seek truth even when it challenges traditional beliefs. His whole life becomes an act of worship to the God of wisdom. His divine sign, the mysterious inner voice that warns him away from certain actions, becomes a source of both guidance and suspicion, marking him as either divinely inspired or dangerously deluded in the eyes of his fellow citizens. This daimonion never tells him what to do, only what not to do. A spiritual stop sign that has guided him since childhood. When it remains silent, he proceeds. When it speaks, he halts immediately. Is this madness or divine favor? He cannot explain its origin, only its consistent presence and unerring guidance. The voice that protects him from error will eventually lead to accusations of introducing new gods. Yet he cannot imagine life without this mysterious companion. The concept of care for the soul emerges as his central teaching. Just as we exercise our bodies and tend our possessions, we must examine and purify our souls. For what profits a person if they gain the whole world but lose their soul? Athens obsesses over physical beauty, military strength, commercial success, yet neglects the only possession that truly belongs to us. The soul requires daily attention, regular examination, constant purification through the admission of ignorance and pursuit of wisdom. This isn't abstract theology, but practical advice, Tend your character as carefully as your garden, for it alone accompanies you beyond death's threshold. His method of cross-examination, the elenchus, becomes both art and spiritual practice. Through systematic questioning, he helps others discover the contradictions in their beliefs, clearing away false knowledge to make room for wisdom. The process can be painful, like surgery without anesthetic, cutting away comfortable assumptions to reveal infected thinking beneath. Yet he wields these questions with compassion, a doctor treating disease rather than attacking patients. Each contradiction exposed is a gift, creating space for truth to enter. The pain of recognizing ignorance becomes birth pangs of wisdom, necessary suffering that leads to intellectual and moral health. The pursuit of definitions becomes crucial. What is justice? What is courage? What is love? By seeking the essence of virtues rather than mere examples, he pushes human thought toward universal truths that transcend cultural boundaries. Examples multiply endlessly. This act is just, that person is courageous. But what makes them so? What common element unites all instances of justice? The search for definitions forces precision, reveals assumptions, distinguishes appearance from reality. Through this method, philosophy moves beyond personal opinion toward objective truth, establishing foundations for all future moral reasoning. His influence on Plato begins to deepen. The young aristocrat watches his master transform confusion into clarity, ignorance into wisdom, leading him to abandon poetry for philosophy and ensuring Socratic thought will survive through written dialogues. Plato possesses everything Socrates lacks: wealth, political connections, literary genius, yet sits at the older man's feet like a child. The wrestler's strength and poet's imagination bend toward philosophy's discipline. In Plato, Socrates finds not just a student, but a living guarantee that his ideas will outlive his body. The spoken word that Socrates prefers will find permanent form in Plato's art, preserving these conversations for millennia. The political implications of his teaching become clearer. If virtue can be taught, why are the sons of great leaders often corrupt? If knowledge is virtue, what does this say about democracy, where the ignorant vote alongside the wise? These questions slice through Athens' comfortable assumptions about merit and governance. The city prides itself on equality, yet Socrates suggests that moral knowledge creates legitimate hierarchy. Those who understand justice should guide those who don't. But who determines understanding? How can we test for wisdom? The questions threaten democracy's foundations while potentially offering its salvation through education. His criticism of Athenian democracy grows sharper. Would you choose a ship's captain by popular vote, or would you want someone who actually knows navigation? Why then do we choose leaders without requiring knowledge of justice and statecraft? The analogy stings because its logic seems irrefutable. Every craft requires expertise. Why should governing be different? Yet he doesn't advocate tyranny or oligarchy, which merely concentrate ignorance in fewer hands. Instead, he envisions a democracy of the educated, where citizens pursue wisdom before power, where the electorate examines life before examining ballots. The vision seems impossibly idealistic, yet what alternative exists for human flourishing? The tension builds between his loyalty to Athens and his higher loyalty to truth. He loves his city enough to criticize it, believing that true patriotism requires holding one's country to the highest moral standards. Like a parent correcting a beloved child, he points out Athens' flaws from devotion rather than malice. The city that gave him life and education deserves his honest assessment, not flattery that enables moral decay. This deeper patriotism, loyalty to Athens' best potential rather than its current failures, marks him as both the city's truest friend and greatest threat. Those who cannot distinguish criticism from betrayal will eventually demand his silence. His teaching on the unity of virtues emerges. Courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom are not separate qualities but different aspects of a single excellence of character that comes from knowledge of good and evil. You cannot possess one virtue fully without possessing them all. True courage requires wisdom to know what deserves risk. Real justice demands temperance to resist corruption. Genuine wisdom includes courage to speak truth. They interweave like threads in a tapestry, each supporting and requiring the others. This unity explains why pursuing any virtue seriously leads to examining them all. why the philosophical life naturally develops complete human excellence. The concept of philosophical midwifery reaches full development, like his mother who helped women give birth. He helps souls give birth to ideas, not by implanting knowledge, but by drawing out the wisdom that already exists within. He possesses no wisdom to transfer, only skill in asking questions that induce intellectual labor. The pain of confusion, the struggle to articulate half-formed thoughts, the final emergence of clarity, all mirror physical birth. And like a midwife, he can assist others in delivery while remaining barren himself, helping souls produce wisdom he doesn't claim to possess. The image captures both his method's power and its essential humility. His poverty becomes a teaching tool. By needing nothing, he demonstrates that happiness comes not from external possessions, but from internal harmony, from the alignment of one's life with wisdom and virtue. His threadbare cloak and bare feet speak louder than any lecture on the dangers of materialism. While others chase wealth, believing it brings security, he finds perfect contentment in philosophical conversation. The freedom from desire becomes its own wealth, liberating him from the anxieties that torment the prosperous. Students learn by observation that the good life requires surprisingly little, that simplicity creates space for what truly matters, the cultivation of wisdom and the care of the soul. The prison cell fills with devoted friends as the final hours approach. Plato, Crito, Apollodorus, and others gathering to witness how a philosopher dies, their grief mixed with wonder at their teacher's continued serenity in the face of death. The small room smells of oil lamps and unwashed bodies, yet Socrates sits as peacefully as if holding court in the agora. His chains removed now that escape is impossible, his voice carrying the same gentle authority it has held for decades. They expect tears, rage, bargaining with the gods. Instead, they find their teacher more fully himself than ever, as if approaching death has distilled rather than diminished his essence. His conversation turns to the soul's immortality, not as dogma to be believed, but as hypothesis to be examined. If the soul is the principle of life, and life is the opposite of death, then perhaps the soul cannot admit death and must be eternal. The logic unfolds with mathematical precision, while outside the prison walls Athens prepares for another ordinary evening. Merchants closing shops, mothers calling children home, unaware that in this cramped cell questions are being asked that will echo through millennia. "Consider," he says, his voice steady despite the knowledge of what approaches, how the soul grasps truths that never change, justice itself, beauty itself, the perfect circle no earthly compass can draw. If the soul can know eternal things, must it not share something of their nature? The theory of recollection returns as evidence for immortality. How can an untutored slave boy solve geometric problems unless his soul remembers knowledge from before birth? And if the soul existed before, why not after death as well? His students lean forward, following the familiar rhythm of his reasoning, finding comfort in the continuation of their usual discourse, even as time runs short. The argument builds like a temple, each stone of logic carefully placed. We recognize truths we've never been taught. We grasp principles that transcend physical experience. We carry within us knowledge that no earthly teacher provided. The soul must have gazed upon these truths in some previous existence, and if it preceded the body's birth, logic suggests it will survive the body's dissolution. He explores the philosopher's unique relationship with death. While others cling to bodily pleasures and fears, the philosopher spends life practicing separation from the physical, making death not an enemy, but a completion of lifelong preparation. "What have we been doing all these years?" he asks with a slight smile. "But learning to ignore the body's demands when they interfere with thought? The true philosopher trains for death without knowing it, teaching the soul to gather itself away from the body's distractions. His calmness isn't resignation, but fulfillment. A runner approaching the finish line of a race well run, a farmer seeing harvest approach after seasons of patient cultivation. The concept of purification emerges as central to his final teaching. Just as gold is refined by fire, the soul is purified through philosophical examination, freed from the illusions and attachments that bind it to ignorance. Each question asked, each assumption examined, Each false belief discarded, all have been steps in this purification, preparing the soul for whatever lies beyond physical existence. The process that began in his father's workshop, chipping away stone to reveal hidden forms, reaches its culmination as he prepares to shed the body itself, the ultimate removal of what doesn't belong to the soul's true nature. His friend's tears prompt gentle correction. They should not mourn for him, but celebrate the possibility that death might be the soul's liberation, its return to the realm of pure forms where truth can be known directly rather than through shadows. "You weep as if you're losing me," he observes, "but you're only losing this aged body that has been more hindrance than help these many years. If the soul survives, and our arguments suggest it does, then I go to continue the same work in better conditions, questioning Homer and Hesiod instead of contemporary poets, examining Solon's laws with Solon himself." The vision transforms grief into something approaching joy, their teacher not destroyed but translated to a realm where philosophical inquiry can proceed without physical limitations. The famous discussion of opposites reveals his logical approach to immortality. Hot comes from cold, sleeping from waking, life from death. And if this cycle is universal, then death must also give birth to life in eternal alternation. The argument possesses the elegant simplicity of his best work, using observable patterns to illuminate invisible truths. Spring follows winter, day follows night, and everywhere in nature opposites generate each other in endless cycles. Why should life and death alone break this universal pattern? The soul moves between states like a traveler between cities, death merely another transition in an eternal journey. He addresses the fear that the soul might be dispersed at death like breath in the wind. The soul's ability to grasp eternal truths like mathematical principles suggests it shares their unchanging, indestructible nature. Can the principle that recognizes indestructible truth itself be destroyed? He asks. Can that which knows the eternal be merely temporary? The questions hang in the lamplit air, their logic as solid as stone, yet pointing toward mysteries beyond logic's reach. His students understand they're witnessing not just philosophical argument, but spiritual testimony, their teacher speaking from the threshold between worlds. The myth of the true earth emerges as he describes the soul's journey after death. Those purified by philosophy ascend to regions of pure light and knowledge, while others remain trapped in cycles of ignorance and reincarnation. He paints the vision with a poet's touch, souls dwelling in pure air above our murky atmosphere, seeing colors we cannot imagine, understanding truths that earthly minds can only approximate. Yet even this myth serves philosophical purpose, suggesting that our choices here determine our condition hereafter, that the pursuit of wisdom carries consequences beyond death's door. His calm analysis of his own approaching death amazes his companions. He examines the process with the same detached curiosity he has brought to every other question, treating his final moments as philosophical data to be understood. "Notice how I feel no anger toward my executioners," he observes, which suggests that understanding truly does lead to virtue. If I can maintain philosophical detachment even now, doesn't this prove our discussions about knowledge and goodness? Even dying becomes a final lesson, a lived demonstration of principles they've explored in countless conversations. The jailer arrives with obvious reluctance, praising Socrates as the noblest prisoner he has ever known, a man who faces death without the curses and complaints that usually accompany executions in Athens. This rough man, accustomed to dealing with the condemned, finds himself moved nearly to tears by the philosopher's gentle courtesy. "Most men rage at me as if I'm responsible," he says, "but you understand I merely follow orders." Socrates comforts his own executioner, demonstrating that philosophical wisdom includes compassion even for those who serve unjust systems. The cup of hemlock is brought as the sun touches the horizon, the poison prepared according to ancient custom, the executioner explaining with professional detachment how the numbness will spread from feet to heart. Socrates listens with the attention he once gave to sophists and politicians, gathering information about this final experience with the same methodical care he's applied to every other human phenomenon. The cup sits on the small wooden table, an ordinary vessel containing an extraordinary transition. the physical means by which Athens will answer the questions he has posed for 70 years. His final philosophical act is to question the executioner about the poison's effects. Even in death, he remains the eternal student, curious about every aspect of human experience, including its ending. Will I remain conscious as the numbness rises? At what point does awareness fade? The executioner, startled by such calm inquiry, provides technical details that Socrates receives like a natural philosopher studying any other process. This transformation of execution into education demonstrates once more that the examined life continues examining until examination itself becomes impossible. The prayer to the gods before drinking reveals his continued piety. He asks for a safe journey to whatever lies beyond, proving that his philosophical questioning has strengthened rather than weakened his spiritual faith. To the god, he says simply, raising the cup, acknowledging both the divine wisdom that has guided his mission and the mystery that awaits. His accusers charged him with impiety, yet here at the end, his reverence runs deeper than those who worship through mere ritual, encompassing a trust in cosmic justice that transcends human understanding. He drinks the hemlock without hesitation, walking calmly around the cell until his legs grow heavy, then lying down as instructed, his body beginning the process of dying while his mind remains clear and focused. His students watch in horrified fascination as their teacher treats even this ultimate test as an opportunity for philosophical observation. The numbness has reached my knees, he reports with scientific precision. Yet my thoughts remain unaffected. This suggests, does it not, that consciousness depends less on the body than we might suppose? The numbness spreads slowly upward as he continues teaching, his voice growing weaker but his thoughts remaining sharp, using even the physical process of dying as a lesson about the soul's independence from the body. Each stage of the poison's progress becomes evidence for their earlier arguments. If the mind can remain clear while the body fails, doesn't this support the soul's separate existence? His students realize they're witnessing not just a death, but a final proof. Their teacher's last gift to those who have followed his path of inquiry. His penultimate words concern a debt to Asclepius, the god of healing. We owe a cock to Asclepius, perhaps suggesting that death is healing, a cure for the disease of embodied existence that separates souls from truth. Or perhaps, with characteristic irony, he refers to being cured of life itself, that condition which necessitates all the questioning and uncertainty that has defined his existence. Even his last recorded words carry multiple meanings, inviting interpretation, refusing to provide the easy answers he has always avoided. The final moments arrive as the poison reaches his heart, his last breath drawn in the same spirit of philosophical inquiry that has defined his entire life, proving that the examined life remains worth living until consciousness itself fades. No last-minute revelations, no deathbed certainties, just the quiet conclusion of a life spent in honest questioning. His face in death carries the same expression it bore in life, calm, slightly amused, as if he's just thought of another question to ask, but must wait for the proper moment to pose it. Plato's absence from the deathbed scene, mentioned in his own account, becomes historically significant. The greatest student was too overcome to witness his master's death, leaving others to record the final moments of Western philosophy's founding martyr. The young man who will preserve these teachings for all time cannot bear to watch their source extinguished, his absence speaking louder than any eulogy. In his grief lies the seed of the dialogues that will make Socrates immortal, art born from loss, philosophy emerging from the need to keep a beloved voice alive. The immediate aftermath transforms grief into mission. Those who witnessed Socrates' death carry forward not just memories, but a method, a way of questioning that will survive in written dialogues and living practice. They leave the prison different than they entered, bearing the responsibility of ensuring their teacher's work continues. Each will interpret the legacy differently, some emphasizing ethics, others metaphysics, still others the method of inquiry itself, but all united in the conviction that something precious must be preserved. Athens awakens the next morning to find itself diminished. The gadfly is gone, the voice that called the city to virtue silenced, leaving citizens to wonder whether they have gained peace or lost their souls. The democracy that killed him continues its daily business, yet something indefinable has changed. In the agora, where he questioned everything, his absence creates a strange silence, as if the city's conscience has been surgically removed, leaving only the hollow motions of commerce and politics. The irony of his execution becomes clear with time. Intended to silence dangerous questioning, his death instead amplifies his message, transforming a local teacher into a universal symbol of intellectual courage and moral integrity. Athens sought to contain his influence by ending his life, but death proves to be the event that spreads his ideas beyond any boundary the city could impose. The hemlock that stopped his heart becomes the catalyst that carries his questions to every corner of the Greek world and beyond. Plato begins writing the dialogues that will preserve Socratic wisdom for posterity, ensuring that the man who wrote nothing will speak to every generation through his students' literary genius and philosophical devotion. In dialogue after dialogue, the voice returns, questioning, probing, refusing easy answers, demonstrating that death cannot silence truth-seeking. Through Plato's art, Socrates achieves the immortality his arguments suggested, living on not as ghost or memory but as eternal questioner, forever asking what we mean by justice, courage, beauty, truth. The Academy is founded as a living monument to Socratic principles, not a place for receiving answers, but for learning to ask better questions, for practicing the art of examination that leads to wisdom. Students gather from across the Mediterranean, drawn by the promise of engaging with ideas that outlive their thinkers. The man who owned no property and charged no fees inspires an institution that will last 900 years, proving that spiritual wealth compounds across generations while material riches crumble to dust. In its gardens and corridors, the work continues, souls helping souls give birth to understanding, the midwifery of mind that Socrates pioneered. The ripple effect spread through Greek culture and beyond. Aristotle studies with Plato, the Stoics adopt Socratic ethics, the Cynics embrace his poverty, each school carrying forward different aspects of his revolutionary approach to wisdom, ensuring that the man who knew nothing becomes the teacher of all who seek to know. 24 centuries have passed since that prison cell in Athens, yet Socrates' central insight remains as fresh as morning dew. The beginning of wisdom is the recognition of our own ignorance, the courage to say, "I don't know," in a world that rewards false certainty over honest inquiry. In our age of instant expertise, where search engines substitute for understanding and opinions masquerade as knowledge, his 3 simple words carry revolutionary power. Every notification promises answers. Every algorithm claims to know us better than we know ourselves. Yet the fundamental questions he posed, what is justice? What is virtue? What makes a life worth living? Remain as elusive and essential as ever. The technology changes, the costumes differ, the cities rise and fall. But human nature continues its ancient patterns, making his insights not historical artifacts, but living wisdom. When you wake tomorrow to a flood of confident assertions and polarized debates, remember the philosopher who found strength in admitting weakness, who discovered that the path to wisdom begins with emptying the cup of false knowledge. His legacy pulses through every genuine conversation, every moment of self-reflection, every choice to dig deeper rather than accept surface explanations. The examined life he championed asks not for perfection, but for honesty, not for final answers, but for better questions, transforming daily existence from unconscious routine into conscious choice. His legacy lives not in monuments of marble, but in every moment we pause to examine our assumptions, question our beliefs, and choose the harder path of authentic seeking over the easier comfort of unexamined opinions. The gadfly's sting still awakening souls from the sleep of certainty. Think of the last time you changed your mind about something important, that uncomfortable moment when a cherished belief crumbled under scrutiny, that discomfort, that productive confusion, that willingness to let go of what you thought you knew. There lives Socrates, still practicing his ancient midwifery, helping ideas be born through the labor of questioning. He needs no temples because every mind that questions itself becomes his shrine, no priests because every honest seeker continues his work. In classrooms where teachers ask rather than tell, in therapy sessions where questions unlock insights, in friendships deep enough to challenge rather than merely affirm, his method continues its patient work. The courage to say, "I might be wrong," in a culture that worships confidence. The humility to learn from anyone regardless of status or age. The persistence to keep seeking truth even when lies would be more profitable. These are his gifts to humanity, more precious than any philosophy carved in stone. Each generation rediscovers him anew, finding in his example permission to think freely, to doubt productively, to choose wisdom over winning arguments. As you drift toward your own peaceful sleep tonight, carry with you this gentle paradox. The man who knew nothing taught us everything about the examined life, proving that true wisdom begins not with answers, but with better questions, not with certainty, but with wonder. Let his example wash over you like a cool evening breeze, reminding you that confusion is not failure, but the beginning of understanding, that admitting ignorance is not weakness, but the first step toward genuine knowledge. In a world that exhausts us with its demands for instant opinions and immediate reactions, Socrates offers a different way: the pause before judgment, the question before assertion, the humble acknowledgement that the most important truths often hide behind our loudest certainties. His life demonstrates that we need not have all the answers to live meaningfully, that the journey of questioning itself provides its own rewards, that wonder rather than knowledge might be the proper state of the human soul. Tomorrow's challenges will arrive with the sunrise, bringing their usual mix of decisions and dilemmas, but tonight you can rest in the profound simplicity of his teaching, that an examined life, however imperfect, surpasses an unexamined one, however successful. The pillow beneath your head knows nothing of philosophy, yet supports you perfectly. Perhaps there's wisdom in that simplicity too, in accepting support while acknowledging mystery, in resting peacefully within the vastness of what we don't yet understand. Rest now in the knowledge that every honest question you ask, every assumption you examine, every moment you choose truth over comfort, you walk in the footsteps of that snub-nosed philosopher who chose hemlock over hypocrisy, and whose voice still whispers across the centuries, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Let that whisper become a lullaby tonight, not demanding immediate action, but inviting gentle reflection, not insisting on dramatic transformation, but suggesting small daily choices toward greater awareness. The same stars that watched over ancient Athens watch over you now, indifferent to human pretensions, but constant in their quiet presence, reminding us that some mysteries deserve reverence rather than solution. In your dreams tonight, perhaps you'll find yourself in that ancient agora, listening to questions that have no easy answers, discovering that the joy lies not in solving the puzzle, but in the companionship of fellow seekers. And when morning comes with its rush of responsibilities, may you carry with you something of Socratic peace, the confidence that comes not from having answers, but from asking better questions, the strength found not in certainty, but in honest searching. The wisdom that knows true rest comes to those who've spent their waking hours in authentic inquiry. Sleep now, modern philosopher, and let ancient wisdom guard your dreams, knowing that tomorrow you'll wake to continue the eternal human conversation that began with a simple admission. I know that I know nothing, and in that knowing found everything.